I think the other thing that we've definitely seen quite, or at least one of the big concerns that we've been hearing from a lot of organizations is employees that are either leaving the organization or are currently on furlough, or are currently essentially, waiting to hear what their fate's going to be, frankly, in quite a lot of situations. I think that's a concern as well. Because I think, disgruntled employees that are on the way out of the business are quite a significant risk and a threat to the corporation's data as well. And I think that we've been seeing quite a rise in the number of concerned employers towards how their data is being handled with employees on the way out. I mean, I'd like to think that people are a bit more trustworthy than that, but certainly that's what we've been seeing a lot of concern from as well. And I get that as well.
And yet you have to look at who has access to the data, who these, the disgruntled employees who can do that or perpetrate those attacks. You have the Tesla example where the employee reported that he was offered $1 million to help crash the systems or help take out Tesla. You have a furloughed employee or disgruntled employee or someone that doesn't know their fate, and they're behind on their payments, their rent, they're behind on credit card bills.
That's it. Desperate people.
They get offered for something. It's going to be in Bitcoin or something untraceable. They feel like they may be able to get away with it. Maybe they don't want to do it, but they feel they're between a rock and a hard place. And and
we had an example recently that was of one of our clients, and they had an instance of somebody that had moved departments, that had access to spreadsheets that had the approvals of expenses, and they had some buddies of theirs that worked in that previous department, and they realized they could access this after they'd been approved before they actually got paid out, and shouldn't have had access to it from the first place. And they had no mechanism for figuring out what had been happening. And this was going on during the pandemic, and it had been going on for about 3 months until they realized that actually someone had been going into the expense reports after they were approved and increasing the amounts by, and it's a reasonably big organization. So it wasn't caught for a little while. And 4 or 5 of the guys in the sales team had some pretty juicy expenses, and it was really, really difficult for them to kind of track back and figure out what had happened. And I think that type of behavior, I think, they shouldn't have had access to it in the first place, but also they should have had the mechanisms to be able to track and detect and figure out exactly what was happening to that as it was happening as well. But I think quite a lot of organizations don't, and I totally understand why, because there's so many other fires to put out, there's so many other things, scary threats out there that you need to address, but it's just things like that can actually be very damaging. And I think we're going to find more problems with insider threats as this all plays out as well.
I think so too. I think the insider threat is continuing to grow, and I think the tools need to improve out there that are there to monitor the intrusions, monitor the unauthorized access. And I think more of a focus on IT managers. And this is unfortunate for IT managers because they already have everything on their plate as well. Is to set up the systems correctly from the very beginning to be able to receive notifications about these kind of events. And that's really the difficulty. If they gone through the effort or the added effort to set up their system to be notified if this did occur or make sure that they didn't have access, it would eliminate a high volume of these kind of attacks or kind of issues. But then again, you have these IT managers that are given 45,000 tasks a week. Things fall off their plate. Priorities are always shifting. It's a go for them.
It is, and also if I take that example I gave a moment ago, I mean, if you actually look at some of the options that are available for an organization to figure out who's got access to that type of data, to do the discovery classification, do the access governance, to do that user behavior, and to figure out that stuff. The reality is actually there aren't that many options out there that aren't crazy expensive or going to be a huge project. And I think that actually is one of the things. I think we need to get to the point when that type of technology is easily accessible, is is not ridiculously expensive, because I think until we do, we're going to have the problem where it'll end up being something that ends up being further down the pile. It is still quite niche. It is too expensive, and it's just crazy. I think we need to try and, it's got a bit silly with some of the costs of some of these solutions, and yet that should be pretty basic stuff. It should be common sense. Everyone should fit. Every organization, especially now, they need to know where their sensitive data is. They need to know who's got access to it, who shouldn't have access. They really ought to find out what people are doing with it, be able to detect anomalies and all of that. But I totally empathize, and I understand why they haven't. There's finite resources, there's finite budgets, and it's like, where do you start? Well, let's start with what we know. This is what we know, so let's do that. But I think that we need to try and, it needs to get easier, it needs to get better. And vendors have got to play their part here as well. I think vendors and end users need to work closer with one another to help these things happen. And it drives me a bit insane, that division that we have between vendors and end users, and there's just not enough partnership happening.
Well, demand follows supply, right? Or supply follows demand. So what's happening right now is these smaller corporations and organizations haven't really had attacks, haven't had a lot of data breaches, and don't have a lot of risk. And that's going to change as ransomware starts, attacking them, and internal employees start trying to, attack them as well. And so I think what you're going to see in the next couple of years, and I've seen a couple articles about it, is ITSM or IT service management tools are going to start bundling their products together. And so what you're going to do is you're going to start being able to go somewhere and buy 6 different products bundled together. They integrate, and they have these pricing tiers that fit your organization. And I think we're going to move into that realm where even a small dental office with 10 computers can have maybe not the same level of protection as a large corporation, but quite a bit of protection. All the tools scaled to their budget to fit their kind of protection scheme. And
makes sense.
I think that's coming as the demand grows. I think ITSM is kind of the solution for that, and that's going to kind of push us, hopefully, to solve that for these small companies. Hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so, because I think that we've got to start, because I think that this isn't. I mean, obviously, quite a lot of the organisations we deal with tend to be kind of mid to large enterprises, but this problem exists across the board. This problem exists, in small businesses just as much as it does the large enterprises. I mean, in fact, arguably within a lot of these SMBs, these small organisations, the implications are even greater. The risk is even greater. It could literally take out their whole business if they don't kind of figure this out. If you've got a 50, 100 user organization, it's easy for access to sprawl out of control. It's easy for for data to end up in places it shouldn't end up, and the implication is significant. So it's
who's your IT? Who's your IT expert in a small company? Who are you going to pay a big time salary in order to come in and protect your organization? I was just reading an article by Inc.com from 2018, so it's a couple years old, but it's saying 60% of small companies will fail within 6 months after a data breach. So a big event will cause or may cause their failure, or gives them the chance for a failure. And the risk is too great. If you're making $2 or $3 million, you're a small company, you're doing well, you have a staff at 10 or 20, you can't afford these giant expensive products. But at the same time, you're putting at risk your sales, your revenue, everything at the same time. And it's such a tough position to be in. It's got to be solved sooner than later, hopefully.